The Pac-12 takes another SEC team down. This time, Auburn. USC gets the win. We saw UCLA get one this past weekend over Kentucky. Now we're seeing the quote-unquote upset. And I say quote-unquote because I know, Steve, you got some words on that one. But USC gets the win over 19-ranked Auburn, 74-71. This game was fantastic. But I feel like you believe that this was something that was in the means of the making, already something that you expected to happen.
I don't know if I would say expected, but USC is a good basketball team. I think they're very young, and I think they're still very inconsistent. But as we talked about, well, more I did, but you sort of went along with me to a certain degree when we did the SEC preview.
Sure.
I think this just might be the year that Auburn slips off a little bit, sort of like what we're seeing with Kentucky, where they're just not getting it done against quality opponents. And that doesn't mean that there's not good players on the roster. I just don't know that Auburn was deserving of a number 19 ranking. So for me, I don't know if it was so much as an upset as it was that Auburn just let themselves get beat. I mean, they out rebounded USC. They dished out more assists. They blocked more shots. They shot better from the floor. They shot better from three-point land. But they had twice as many turnovers. 22-11, and a lot of points. I mean, especially these Pac-12 teams do a great job in transition off turnovers. I don't know whether it's just something in the water out west or whatever it is, but all of the teams, even the bad teams in the Pac-12, do pretty well as far as transition play off of turnovers. So, it was the Boogie Ellis show in a lot of ways.
Oh, man. Yeah, Boogie Ellis, he was awesome. Before we really dig into USC, though, and talk about Boogie Ellis, I wanted to stick to Auburn just real quick. Now, we really haven't seen too much of Auburn so far this season because they haven't really played any significant teams. And what I mean by that is they haven't played any of the other top 25 teams in the mix. They obviously have played Memphis. They lost to Memphis. That was their other loss. They played USC. We've seen them play teams like St. Louis and George Mason at the beginning of the season as well. I mean, significant teams, yes, but not top 25 teams.
Right.
So it really makes you wonder, is this a team that is going to be able to battle in this SEC, a conference that we know is very tough once we get down to the thick of it? They got to play Washington as well before they get to the SEC play, and Washington is no walk in the park. The Pac-12 is really showing that they are a deeper conference than I think most expected.
Yes.
Well, my question about Auburn, well, before we really dig into USC side, is there's a few transfers, and obviously they have to fill the shoes of what we saw with Walker Kessler and Smith and Jabari Smith and things like that. Johnny Broome, is he enough? He's doing fantastic, and we saw some great things from him in this game, but is he enough?
I don't think so, though. Donaldson had a good game too. I mean, I thought Donaldson had a pretty solid game. He did what he does, and he made a significant contribution to the effort there. But I mean, obviously, you're doing these schedules years out, so it's not like Bruce Pearl knew that there would be all these transfers coming in this year. I mean, he knew he's got to replace players, and the transfer portal is probably the predominant way to do it now. It's not just relying on freshman recruiting classes. It's, going to the transfer portal, picking the players to fit your system. So, but I do think that the Auburn coaching staff was probably very happy that they had a little less challenging schedule than some of their SEC counterparts, because they needed to get these transfers into a system. It's a different system. I mean, Bruce Pearl, it's defense first, but even offensively, it's a much more, I don't want to say complicated, but it's a very unique offensive system that they employ there. So it was going to take them some time to get, in sync, to get themselves ready for the SEC. I just wonder if it's the level of people that they brought in. Are they enough to keep them competitive in the upper echelons of the SEC? I mean, they're not going to fall to the bottom, but, I'm wondering, are they more middle of the pack now SEC team rather than a top 4 or 5 team, which a lot of the preseason rankings, and even you and I had them in that top 5 when we were doing the SEC preview. So I think it's really more that than it is that they didn't consciously go out to hurt themselves, but it didn't work out as well as I think they thought it would playing the softer schedule and then having these players transition in. They didn't seem in sync. The two times that I've seen full Auburn games this year, they did not see to be in sync whatsoever.
Speaking of transfers, and we're talking about second-year transfer going from Memphis to USC, and that's Boogie Ellis. And I think I wore a perfect hat here, San Diego, California native. Wow, what a game that he had in this one. What was it, 28 points? Now he's averaging over 15 points per game in the season so far. He is really doing some fantastic things for this squad. USC is one of those fun teams, and they have the opportunity to really make some noise in the Pac-12. They're is a certain tier. And I think UCLA and Arizona hold that tier. And then there's another tier that, in my mind, leads by Arizona State, Oregon, and then I put USC in that kind of tier as well. Is there a tier, or is there a scenario where you can see USC stepping up to that first tier this season? You think they can be able to run with teams like UCLA and Arizona?
I think they can be competitive against teams like that. But I agree with you. There's Arizona and there's UCLA, and then there's a middle level of teams where USC would fit in there. Now, if you're asking me, will USC cause troubles late in the year and maybe in the Pac-12 tournament, I would probably go that direction and say that can definitively happen. Because again, I do think it's going to take time when you have a lot of young talent. It's not that they're not talented. It's just they're not used to this kind of stage. And even though a lot of their recruits have played, in McDonald's All-American games and all of these other traveling AAU team events and all, yes. So they've had that kind of pressure. But I'm sorry, even with the packed house for an AAU game or a McDonald's All-American game, it's not the same as playing night in, night out in front of packed houses, in a conference like the Pac-12. So I think it's going to take USC a little while to really find out, hey, what do we have? But as far as any given night scenarios, that famous cliche, at any given night, I think USC is going to have more any given nights than a lot of other teams in the Pac-12.
Well, we're going to definitely see what they got coming to them as they take on UCLA twice in January. And then sandwiched in between that, they do play Arizona. So Pac-12 is no walk in the park. We are seeing that for sure this season. It's a lot deeper than we expected, even with a team that hasn't won a single game in Cal so far this year. The Pac-12 is super deep. Let us know your thoughts in the comment description below. Hit like and subscribe while you're there. And thanks for watching SlasherU.